In this video, I'm going to walk you through the coordinated entry workflow. We're then going to look at how to add referrals for clients, and then we'll take a look at the housing priority list at the end. One of the first things you want to check is, are you in the right work group? You want to make sure that you are in the coordinated entry work group, because that's the only way you're going to be able to access the coordinated entry workflow. To check which work group you're in, hover over your name in the top right utility bar, and it should say coordinated entry. If it doesn't, you can click on your name and then click on the drop-down work group menu. If you don't see coordinated entry as one of your work groups, go ahead and get in touch with us at hmis@thn.org, and we can add that for you. Just move it there. To start the workflow, go ahead and click on the coordinated entry workflow icon. The first screen that we're going to see is this coordinated entry pre-screening. This is just asking if the client would like a referral to a survivor service provider. None of this information that you enter here is connected to the client that you see in the top left-hand corner. This information mainly acts as a counter of sorts. So if you enter that yes, the client does want a referral, it's not going to attach to this client. This may not even be the client that you're going to start the coordinated entry workflow on. For this example, I'm going to change the date a couple of years back just so I don't affect any of the data that we have so far in the website. And when you click on Save, you should get to the referral information page where you will see that the domestic violence referral is already selected as a service for you, and you can search for the service provider. Once you are done making your referral, you can save on the bottom right. I'm going to cancel out of this very quickly. And I'm going to start again. I'm going to click on coordinated entry workflow. And instead of saying yes, they want a referral, I'm going to say no. Let me move this back a couple years there and re-enter this information. And when you click on save in this instance, it instead pushes you through to this add or edit page. So for those of you that have already done intakes for other programs, this is going to look really familiar to you. Add new client is basically adding a client into the system. You would select this when you are fairly certain that the client that you're trying to enter into HMIS is not already in this system. So maybe you have already conducted a search, you've searched maybe 2 or 3 times, and your client didn't show up. So you're pretty confident that they're not in HMIS yet. You would then click Add New Client. Use the current client means that you are going to start the coordinated entry workflow for the client that you see listed in the top left-hand corner here, and then select another client. Would just be doing a search in the system. For this example, I am going to use the current client. This is going to take you through to the basic client information page. Again, if you have done any intakes in the past for other programs, this is going to look really familiar. This page is just asking for some basic demographic information. And towards the bottom is where you can enter contact information for the client, or if they have additional contacts, for example, a family member, a friend, maybe a doctor, you can enter their name, phone number, and email here as well. I'm going to say that all of this information is correct and up to date. Just keep in mind that when you are adding a completely new client, you will still get to this page, but the fields are going to be blank. So it'll be up to you to go in and fill out this information. I'll select Finish on the bottom right to move on. to the information release and security page. One thing for sure that you want to make certain on this page is the information release number. This needs to say 10,001. There are some instances where the release number will just be 1, but our default needs to be 10,001. That's sort of the number, the special balance of state ROI number, if you will. It's how information gets shared across the system. You can set a begin date and an end date for the information release. And you'll notice that you have a security restriction down here. Now, for the sake of my example, since I'm currently in Texas Homeless Network and we don't really share any information across the system, my client is set to restrict to organization, just because this is a dummy client and I don't want this information affecting any other agency. The majority of our users and our clients are either set to this share intake to MOU or info release, or share intake globally. Let me go through the restrictions or security restrictions up here. So restrict to organization will override any information releases and hides the entire client record from all other organizations. So what this means is if you set your client to restrict to org, no other agency will be able to find your client. Share intake to MOU or info release allows only the organizations granted access to the client record through information releases or exceptions to access the client record. This is where the majority of our agencies fall. Agencies that have PATH programs or runaway homeless youth grant programs, the agencies that deal with youth populations or substance abuse issues, those agencies are automatically restricted and no one is really able to see their data. For other agencies like emergency shelters or supportive services only types of agencies, they're all sharing the same MOU. And then lastly, share intake globally allows all organizations to access the client intake and create transactions. So when you click on share intake globally, that client is able to be found by anyone, by any agency in the system. For this example, I'm going to leave mine at restrict to org, but yours will probably be something different depending on the information release form that the client signs. I'll click on save to move on. Family members is the next page. This is where you would add any family members to your client. So you may have someone come in with a family, maybe a mother and her 2 kids. If you know that the family members are already in the system, you can find them by clicking on the magnifying glass and conducting a regular search like you normally would. So you can search by name, social, birthday, or if you have the client ID, you can type that in as well. Now, if this is a completely new family, you can still add those new family members to this page. You would just click in one of the empty rows here and start manually typing out the information to fill out across the row. And you can also change the restrictions at the far right as well. It's very important that you fill out the family members that present at your agency. The reason for that is because as we're going to go through a VI SPDAT, if you have a family, like again with that example, a mother and her 2 kids, you'd want to have the kids entered there because then they would show up on the FVI SPDAT form. For this example, I am going to leave the family members as they are. I'm going to save and close and move on to the program enrollment page. From here, you should select Texas Balance of State Coordinated Entry from the drop-down menu. And you should then see your client appear in the list. To enter your client, go ahead and click on their name, and the row should highlight for you, and you'll see that the entry date is today's date. Now, we heavily encourage direct data entry. Right? Enter the data as the client comes in, essentially. But, if that's not possible, if you are doing any back data entry, you want to make absolutely certain that this project entry date matches the true date that the client presented at your agency and went through that coordinated entry intake. Also keep in mind that the coordinated entry process will only be done, at least in the case of Denton, will only be done at Denton for clients that are, presenting as homeless. So if someone comes in and they aren't homeless, or they're just looking for supportive services, maybe rental assistance, you would not go through the coordinated entry process. Again, this is just for Denton at the moment. So once this is done, again, I'm only going to do this one client, but keep in mind if you have multiple adults that you click on, the system will automatically take you through all of the necessary assessments that you need to fill out for them. Just to keep it simple, I'm only going to enter my one client. I'm going to save. The universal data assessment is going to be the first assessment that we see here. Again, you'll need to answer assessing community and entry point. What is the client's housing status? Well, since coordinated entry at this point is only being done for clients who present as homeless, I'm going to click on Category 1 Homeless. Living situation. So where was the client staying just the night before they presented at your agency? My client was in a place not meant for habitation. The length of stay was about 2 to 6 nights. Approximate date homelessness started, I'll say a couple of days ago. And regardless of where they stayed last night, number of times the client has been on the streets, in emergency shelter, or safe haven in the past 3 years, including today. I'll say twice. And then total number of months homeless in the past 3 years. For my client, I'll say this is about 3 months, and save. At the point that we reach the VI SPDAT, this is kind of where it gets into what I would consider a sort of like choose your own adventure type of territory, right? So depending on what your client scores on the VI SPDAT, the workflow is going to progress a little differently. So keeping that in mind, what I'm going to do is go through very, very quickly a VI SPDAT. I won't go through all of the questions, but I will cover some sections of the VI SPDAT. And I'll start off with a low score to start with, and we'll progress through the workflow from there. And once we're near the end, I'll circle back and change that low score to a higher score, and then progress from there and see how things are slightly different. So let's try that now. Since my client is in a household made up of single individuals, I only entered my one client, I'm going to stick with a VI SPDAT assessment. For households that identify themselves as a family, a group of persons residing together, I would then click on Add New VI SPDAT Assessment. I know that, when we looked at family members, I did have that one minor there. If I had entered both of them, I would do a VI SPDAT, a family VI SPDAT. But for, just for this example, I'm going to pretend that my client presented at the agency alone and they are on their own. I'm going to click on New VI SPDAT Assessment. At the top, you have an administration section. So your name will automatically appear, so will the date and time of the assessment. For the interview location, we've seen a lot of agencies use this in different ways. We're coming up with a protocol or a naming convention on how to use this interview location so that it is consistent and easier to search by when we get to the housing priority list. For those of you that have already done a VI SPDAT, this will all look very familiar. For those who haven't done a VI SPDAT, there are extra videos and trainings on the VI SPDAT itself. Some things to note: the red bars are sections that automatically calculate or tally up the score for you. So depending on what the section is and what you answer, the score might change for that section. All the way at the bottom, we have the scoring section itself. So it tallies up each section and then gives you a grand total. On the right-hand side, you're going to see recommendations for score totals. So from 0 to 3, there's no housing intervention. From 4 to 7, the recommendation is rapid rehousing. And then for 8 or higher, permanent supportive housing or housing first is the recommendation. Keep in mind that these results and recommendations are slightly different for the family VI SPDAT. I'm going to keep my pre-screen total, or excuse me, my grand total at 1. I'm going to save. And we should see, 1, that we have a score total of 1 on the far right. The type is single adults. When I then click on next on the bottom right, you'll notice on the intake panel here on the left that we have VI SPDAT score 0 to 3. And the page that we're now looking at is the diversion outcome assessment. So for clients that scored a 3 or below, the idea is that you're going to try and divert them. Just to go through some of the guidance on this page, diversion assists households in finding housing outside of shelter by helping them identify immediate alternate housing arrangements and, if necessary, connecting them with services and financial assistance to help them return to permanent housing. So the services households are provided with when being diverted are services that case managers working in most poverty and homeless assistance organizations are trained and funded to deliver. They include provision of financial, utility, and/or rental assistance, short-term case management, conflict mediation, connection to mainstream services and/or benefits, and housing search. There is not a single strategy that makes diversion a success. A successful diversion uses the first conversation with the household as an opportunity to explore their current housing crisis, not to ask a list of diversion questions. So a good problem-solving conversation includes exploring any potential resources a household may have to stay where they are or where they were residing or move to another housing opportunity. In many cases, just having staff engage in a conversation to get to know the household allows for successful resolution without any financial assistance. All of that in mind, there's really only 2 sections on this assessment. The diversion outcome. So after you have that conversation with your client or clients, the first question here is, was the household able to identify an alternative shelter or an alternative to shelter for tonight? If this is a yes, you will then be asked, where will the household stay tonight? And then how long will the household be able to stay? The bottom section asks, were you able to provide the following to the household? Landlord mediation, conflict resolution. As more users engage with the system and input data, we might find that this list expands or changes. But for now, we only have these 2. I'm going to say that we were able to provide some conflict resolution. Next up is unmet needs. This looks like adding quick services, if you've ever done that before. You would then check off some of the client's unmet needs. Maybe they have rental arrears and unmet utility payments. The reason for that unmet need, maybe there were no funds available at that time. Was the resource not available in the community? Was the client not eligible? Or was there an other reason? When you select other, you're then required to actually put what that other reason is. The idea behind that is if we get a lot of these other reasons, we could then potentially add them to this reason for unmet need list to make it easier. So using data in that sense, using data to inform what we add to the system. Save and close. Referrals are next. And this is kind of like the quick referrals that we saw, like the quick services that we just saw. You would select the service. And I have quite a few. And then once you select the service, you would then select the provider. So click on the blue magnifying glass. And heads up, the actual cities for the referrals are not really going to make much sense here. But essentially that is how you would add your referrals. And again, you probably might notice that my restrictions over here say restrict to org. That's just because, again, I'm in Texas Homeless Network. So all of our data is automatically restricted, so it doesn't really mess with everyone else's stuff. Okay, so at this point, when you save and close this page, the workflow is done. It completes itself, it says you're finished. You would then be dropped off onto the client's dashboard, and you would see, you know, on their dashboard, they would have that little enrollment with the blue action button next to it. And that's basically kind of like your visual cue that you have gone through coordinated entry with this client. At this point, though, this is where I'm going to circle back to my VI SPDAT. This is not something that I recommend you doing unless you realize that you made a mistake on the client's VI SPDAT. Maybe you realize that you know, maybe there was a section of questions that you completely skipped, or maybe the client answered those questions and you forgot to enter them. I don't know. But essentially, I'm just showing this so that you can get a sense of how the workflow is going to be a little different based on what the score is. So I'm going to click on VI SPDAT. That's going to take us to this VI SPDAT history page again. And to make any edits or changes to your client's VI SPDAT, click on the blue action button and then click Edit, View Single Adult. Again, this is not something that I recommend unless you absolutely have to edit the client's assessment. I'm just going to click on a few of these to get my client score up. Let me save. All right, now my score total is 5. I'm going to click on Next, and notice how on that left intake panel, it now says VI SPDAT 4+. So any score that is 4 or above is going to be pushed through to this VI SPDAT, FVI SPDAT outcome page. So you're not going to see that diversion page for clients that score a 4 or higher. There is a lot of guidance on this page. And I recommend that, you know, for your first time or your first couple of times, go through it. Go through and read it, see what it, see how it can help you and your client. This guidance is going to stay on this page. If anything changes, it will be updated. We will let you know that it is updated, but there will never not be guidance. On the bottom of the page is where you're going to see, and it's kind of hard to tell in a video, but I'm doing air quotes here, if the client passed or if they failed for a certain type of housing recommendation. Now, I don't like those terms, passed or failed, like you passed for transitional housing, you failed for permanent supportive housing. But that's just kind of the system's way to tell you that because the client scored a 5, it's not recommended that they have permanent supportive housing, right? They have a fail there. You can even click on that and it'll tell you VI SPDAT total score is 8 or higher, right? That's what they would need for permanent supportive housing. For rapid rehousing or transitional housing, they have the proper score for that. Now there's a couple of things that you can do on this page. You can click on the little blue person, the little blue icon next to that, and you'll see the Coordinated Access Rapid Rehousing Service in this instance, and then you could search for the provider. So you could essentially make the referral right from this page. I will get to adding referrals a little later on here once the workflow is completed, but this is just one way that you can do it if it suits your needs or suits the way your work process is, or you can always wait to the quick referrals at the end. They basically go to the same place. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wait. I'm going to skip because there's really nothing for me to do on this page. And you'll see that we skipped over record unmet needs because we had already done that before. In your case, what I'm assuming, what will be your case, you would just go through and see the unmet needs and then the referrals, right? We just skipped it because I circled back and changed that VI SPDAT. All right, let's really get to starting on referrals. I'm going to click on those 2 referrals that I had before. And I'm also going to do a housing referral. I know my client didn't qualify for permanent supportive housing, but just for the sake of this example, I'm going to do a permanent supportive housing. And we have 2 here. The reason why we needed to make a coordinated access service is kind of a long story. To make it short, it's just how it had to happen in this system. If I had set the regular permanent supportive housing service on the eligibility page that we just saw, that would mean that it would block everyone who doesn't have a 8 or higher on their VI SPDAT from entering a permanent supportive housing program. That's just kind of how eligibility works in HMIS. So it was easier to create like a separate set of services that say coordinated access. All right, you'll click on your provider. This is the one that makes sense because I'm doing this for Denton. All right, so once you have your referral set, you can save and close. Client Truck will let you know that you are finished. And you'll be dropped off onto the client's dashboard. You should see that Texas Balance of State Coordinated Entry on their dashboard. You should also see any of their unmet needs services appear. Their contact information will appear in this first box on the right. So whatever we put as their contact on that basic client information page, that'll be here. And then whatever contact information you put on their latest VI SPDAT, that's going to be here as well. Let's look at providers. So we made that permanent housing referral to Denton County MHMR. To look at that, there's 2 different ways. You can click on the referrals for your clients, and you can see that referral here. The status is referral made. They don't have a result though, right? So if, for example, you wanted to update that result, you could click on the blue action button, edit the referral, and change that referral outcome information section. But you might ask, what if we want Denton County MHMR to do that? How can we get them to do that? Good question. If you click on the workspace button up here at the top, you'll see the workspaces that we have available in the coordinated entry work group. Providers is at the far right. You're going to click on that. I'm already on Denton County MHMR. If, for example, if Denton County MHMR, if you're watching this right now, you can find yourself, and that sounds very philosophical, you can click on Find Provider. And in the city, since I'm working with Denton right now, these are the current providers that we have for Denton. You can then click on the provider that you want to look at, Denton County MHMR. You'd click on yourself. And you get a dashboard that's, it looks pretty similar to a client dashboard. At the top, you have clients referred to provider. So you have the date that the referral was made, what's the client's name, what was the service. And then at the very far right, if the client has completed a VI SPDAT, you would see their VI SPDAT total. If they don't have a total, that means that they have not completed a VI SPDAT. at the bottom, or kind of towards the bottom, you have a provider services list. So we have a couple of different services that are associated with Denton County MHMR. If this needed to be changed or updated, maybe they actually offer more services than what you see on this list, you can add more services by clicking on the header there, and then you can add a service or do quick services. Let's go back to the dashboard though and click on this little notepad that says edit. So Denton County MHMR, let's say you check your referrals every day, right? Maybe every morning you check to see, how many agencies or what agencies referred clients to you. And you have the client sitting in front of you. You click on edit for that referral. And you can say, okay, we acknowledge this today. The result was the client ineligible, could not contact, information only, no show. Let's say it was information only. You can also add comments. Maybe the client is going to come back at a later date. You can save and close. Right? So maybe this was information only because the client, doesn't really have a recommendation for permanent supportive housing, but we feel like, despite their score, maybe they have some other characteristics that would make permanent supportive housing a good recommendation for them. So for now, it was only information only. Maybe later on down the road, we might get another referral for them, and their VI SPDAT score may end up being higher at that time. Okay, so that's looking at referrals. The last thing that I want to cover in this training is the housing priority list. To find it, you're going to click on the workspace button up near the top, and you're going to want to go to the home workspace, the one on the very far left. Ignore this. Client Track said they were going to fix it, but who knows? Under My Client Track, you should see a menu option that says Housing Priority List for COC grantees. Some of you have already tried this, and one thing you have probably noticed is that it takes a very, very, very long time to load. The reason why it takes a long time to load is because there are lots of clients that it's trying to pull, lots of data. We're talking about upwards of 1,700 VI SPDATs, that is trying to pull all in one go. Plus, we're looking at things like veteran status. If they went through coordinated entry, we're looking at specific information that they would only get through coordinated entry. We're looking at the VI SPDAT score totals. If they have a coordinated entry status, oh, that's another thing. I will go back and explain what a coordinated entry status is. And you'll also see that one of these fields is already filled out, right? So based on the client's last enrollments, it's trying to see if the client is currently housed or not. And the default is we want to see all of the clients who are not currently housed. Or are they in housing? No. So that's the default there. If you instead typed yes and searched for that, you'd probably get a shorter list for clients that are currently housed based on their last enrollment or current enrollment. The only thing required on this search page is the assessing organization. So still keeping Denton in mind, you can select certain Denton agencies. Let's say, we're, for this example, Our Daily Bread and Salvation Army of Denton. And I'm going to keep all of these open and kind of vague here, but I'm going to select search. So notice how long it takes. It's only looking at 2 agencies, but it's still kind of chugging along. You may come up against a page that's basically a giant X, right? A red X or an error. If you do come across that, my only advice for you right now is to just keep trying, right? To click on housing priority list for COC grantees. See, so there was a problem submitting the form. Let's see if I can click on it again. And again, this is just because there is so much data and it's trying to pull the data from different parts of the system. So it has to think about it quite a bit. We realize that this is an issue and it's going to, get to be a bigger issue, especially since we have so many agencies that are, one, doing the VI SPDAT, and two, are going to jump on board with coordinated entry. Let's try this again. So the more agencies that put in data, the more VI SPDATs we're going to get. So we are looking at different ways to address this problem, but for now, we can only just sort of click and try again. There we go. All right, so for our two agencies, Our Daily Bread and Salvation Army of Denton, we have 78 results. You'll see that if they have gone through a coordinated entry assessment, you'll see the date listed here. The VI SPDAT assessment date is next. You'll have the client ID, client name, if they are a veteran. Assessing community and entry point, these are only if they have gone through coordinated entry. You have the VI SPDAT assessing organization, the VI SPDAT interview location, and then score total, how many years and months they've been homeless, what's their family size. If they have a CE status, it'll be listed here. And again, I will go over what this is. So again, lots of information on this page. You can export this data by clicking on Excel Data Export, and you can filter your information from there. So once you get your Excel downloaded, you can set filters to only look at a certain date range, or you can set your filter to only look at veterans or scores within a certain range. So there is some flexibility there. Now, let's say that you have tried it a couple of times, or you've tried loading the housing priority list a couple of times and it's not working, or it's not going fast enough, or you realize that you don't even need all of this information, you just kind of need like a quick and dirty number, right? How many VI SPDATs have you done? What's the average score? That kind of thing. There are some workarounds, or one workaround, I should say, that you can use that is fast, but it doesn't give you nearly as much information as this does. So you can click on HMIS reports, and you'll see that there is a folder that says VI SPDAT and SPDAT assessments. We're focused on the bottom two here, VI SPDAT, and they have it backwards, but it says VIF SPDAT. Let's click on VI SPDAT. And this is like a giant VI SPDAT history page. So kind of like what we saw when we were looking at our client and doing our VI SPDAT for our client, but this is for everyone in the system. You can you can export from Excel. Just keep in mind that when you do that, you are downloading everyone's information, everyone that has ever done a VI SPDAT. Again, that's when filters become necessary, right? If you're going to go this route, you want to make sure that your filter is set so that you're only looking at clients who were assessed by your organization. Okay, I'm going to go, and the enrollment is required, so you can select the coordinated entry that we just made. And there is a section called CE statuses, right? So if a client declined coordinated entry services, or maybe you made a referral for a rapid rehousing and they decline, you can then put client declined as their CE status. And this would then show up in the housing priority list. So anytime a client goes through a VI SPDAT, anytime they get a different CE status, that information is updated automatically on the housing priority list. So we do have different statuses here. accepted, declined housed, contact attempt 1, 2, and 3, and then unable to contact client. I said this before, I'll say it again. This is what we have to start with based on the feedback we get from users, and the more comfortable users get with the system, they may realize that they may need more. So this list of statuses could potentially be expanded upon. For now, this is what we feel like you're going to get the most use out of. All right, so that is the coordinated entry training from start to finish. We went through the workflow, we looked at referrals, and we took a peek at the housing priority list. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch at hmis@thn.org.